welcome to today's On This Day in Tudor History with me, Claire Ridgway. I'm an author. I write Tudor history books and I blog about Tudor history. I dream about Tudor history. I do everything to do with Tudor history. So a bit of a self-confessed Tudor nut. I'm sure you are too. Okay, where am I taking you today? Well, I'm taking you back to a very interesting day and a very, very sad day, I'm afraid, very brutal day, fair warning, in 1540. So on this day in Tudor history, 4th of August 1540, the executioner was having a very busy day. If I've added them up correctly, and I believe I have, 13 men at least were executed on this day in 1540. Chronicler and Windsor Herald Charles Risley records this year, the 4th day of August, were drawn from the Tower of London to Tyburn Giles Heron, gentleman, Clement Philpott, gentleman, late of Calais and servant to Lord Lisle, Darby Jenning, Edmund Brindholm, priest, William Horne, late a lay brother of the Charterhouse of London, and another, with 6 persons more, were there hanged, drawn, and quartered. And one Charles Carew, gentleman, was that day hanged for robbing of my Lady Carew. All which persons were attainted by the whole Parliament for treason. So, wow, such a busy day in Tudor England. So we have Heron, Philpott, Jenning, Brindholm, Horne, and another, 6 persons more, and Charles Carew. I really do think that that is 13. Whew. Such an awful, brutal day. But let's have a look at who these people were and why their lives had ended in this way, in such a brutal way. What had happened in their life to lead them to this? Well, Brother William Horne was a lay brother of London Charterhouse, and he was the last of the Carthusian monks, the Carthusian martyrs, to be killed. The French ambassador Marillac writes of how Horne refused to relinquish his habit at his execution. Between May 1535 and August 1540, 18 members of the Carthusian order were put to death. Their crime? Well, they refused to accept King Henry VIII as the supreme head of the church in England. They'd been sort of used as an example by Thomas Cromwell and King Henry VIII. Cromwell had gone to the Charterhouse to ask them to sign the oath to accept the king as supreme head of the Church of England, believing that they would and that they could then be used as an example of good behaviour. See, the London Charterhouse are accepting the king. They prayed for 24 hours and felt that they couldn't by all conscience do that. And so they ended up having to suffer for it. Some of them were hanged, drawn and quartered. Some were hanged in chains. Others were starved to death in prison. Just awful. All of them have been recognised as martyrs by the Catholic Church. I'll give you links to other talks that I've done on the Carthusian monks so that you can find out more about them. Then we have Giles Heron, gentleman, who was also hanged, drawn and quartered. Now, he'd been a ward of the late Sir Thomas More, who, of course, had been Henry VIII's Lord Chancellor. Thomas More, of course, had been executed for treason in 1535. Heron had married More's daughter, Cecily, and he'd also served King Henry VIII as an esquire of the body. He'd been an MP, a member of Parliament for Thetford as well. And in 1536, we see Heron's name coming up in the records because he served as a foreman of the Grand Jury of Middlesex, which drew up the indictments of charges against Queen Anne Boleyn and the 5 men accused with her. Now, it appears that Heron's downfall was due to a dispute with his tenant, a man named Lyons, who Heron had evicted from his farm. Lyons took revenge by telling Thomas Cromwell that Heron was a traitor. Heron was attainted in May 1540 and condemned to death and, of course, executed. Clement Philpott, another man who died on this day, Risley describes him as gentleman late of Calais and servant to the Lord Lisle, and he was indeed a servant of Arthur Plantagenet, Viscount Lisle and Deputy of Calais. Philpott's master, Lord Lisle, had opposed Thomas Cromwell in 1540 and had been arrested in May 1540, accused of treasonable communications with Cardinal Reginald Pole, who had upset King Henry VIII by speaking out against the annulment of his marriage with Catherine of Aragon, and speaking out against the break with Rome, and that. So, yes, Cardinal Reginald Pole caused some problems for the king. Lisle was imprisoned in the Tower of London and remained there until his death on the 3rd of March 1542, when he suffered a heart attack after hearing the news that he was going to be released. How awful is that, to be told you're going to be released and then die? Oh, it's so sad. Oh, and now we have a cat cameo from Majesty. Philpott was also accused of being involved with Cardinal Pole, but unlike his master, who managed to die a natural death, Philpott, of course, ended up suffering a full traitor's death. Okay, our next man, Edmund Brindholm. He was, as Risley describes, a priest, and he was linked to Lord Lisle as well, having served Lord Lisle as a chaplain. Like Philpott, he was accused of being involved with Cardinal Reginald Pole. I'm not sure who Darby Jennings was. I haven't been able to find any more about him, but I think he was probably also one of Lord Lisle's servants. Charles Carew, the man who's described as a gentleman and who was hanged for robbing of my Lady Carew, was the illegitimate son of courtier Sir Nicholas Carew. Sir Nicholas had been executed in 1539 for his alleged involvement in the Exeter conspiracy. Those involved in this conspiracy were accused of wanting to depose King Henry VIII and to sort of replace him with Cardinal Reginald Pole, son of Margaret Pole, Countess of Salisbury, and grandson of George Plantagenet, 1st Duke of Clarence. Charles Carew was a rector. He was rector of Beddington, and he was accused of plotting to rob his grandmother being Lady Carew, Malin Oxenbridge Lady Carew. But it sounds like the crown just wanted rid of anyone who was linked to Cardinal Pole. After all, they couldn't get their hands on the cardinal as he was safely abroad. Of course, Margaret Pole ends up being executed as well, various members of the family. So you couldn't get their hands on the cardinal, so other people have to suffer on his behalf. But I will leave you with links to my talks on the Carthusian martyrs, such sad stories that these men of God ended up being executed simply because, like Thomas More, their conscience would not allow them to accept Henry VIII as supreme head of the church. So sorry to have left you on such a gloomy note with 13 executions happening on this day. Sorry about that. Hopefully I can come up with something happier tomorrow, but you just never know with Tudor history. Anyway, I'll be back tomorrow with another Tudor history event. In the meantime, you can subscribe to the channel, and I would encourage you to do that, as it really, really does help other people find me. You can like this video if you've enjoyed it. You might not enjoy the actual content, the idea of 13 people being executed, but you might have liked my talk about it. And you can hit the bell to be notified as videos go live as well. See you tomorrow. Take care. Bye-bye.